Zara pressed and hissed in pain as the searing heat of the metal tray kissed the inside of her palm, the scent of scorched skin mixing with the sugary aroma of vanilla cupcakes. "Damn it," she muttered, dropping the tray with a loud clatter onto the folding table. A few of the cupcakes tumbled to the ground. Her hand throbbed, turning red faster than she could blink. Around her, the chaos of the community bake sale carried on, kids screaming, parents chatting, ovens humming from the back of the church kitchen, but her world narrowed to the burn and the sting of embarrassment. "Move," a deep voice said, cutting through the noise like a command. Before she could even register what was happening, a man knelt beside her, grabbing a bottle of water and a clean towel from the table. He poured the water over the towel and gently pressed it to her hand. "Let me see," he said, his voice calm but firm. He looked up, and that's when she really saw him: tall, sharp jaw, dark brown eyes that looked like they didn't miss a thing. His navy suit didn't belong here, neither did his Rolex, or the way people seemed to part around him like they felt his presence before they saw him. "It's not that bad," Zara said quickly, trying to pull her hand away. He held it gently but didn't let go. "You burned yourself, that's bad enough." "I've done worse," she said, forcing a laugh. He didn't smile. "You should have someone look at it." "Properly? Are you a doctor?" "No," he said, finally cracking a small grin. "Just someone who doesn't like watching people get hurt while trying to sell cupcakes." She blinked. "Do I know you?" "No," he said, "but I know a burn when I see one. Come on." "I have a first aid kit in my car." Zara hesitated. "You carry a first aid kit in your car?" "I own a lot of things," he said, standing and offering his hand. "Come on." Too stunned to argue, she let him lead her across the parking lot to a black car that looked like it belonged in a James Bond movie. He tapped the trunk, and it opened automatically. Inside was a sleek leather case. He opened it, pulled out a burn cream, gauze, and a pair of gloves like he'd done this 100 times. "You're very prepared," she said, watching as he cleaned her burn with practiced care. "I don't like surprises," he said. "Except maybe for this one." "What do you mean?" He looked up, his eyes locked onto hers. Zara's breath hitched, but she shook her head. "You don't even know me." "Not yet." She pulled her hand back, flustered. "Thank you, really. I should get back before my cousin starts yelling about the cupcakes." He closed the case and nodded. "I'll walk you." They walked side by side, and for a moment the noise of the bake sale returned, but it felt different now, like something had shifted. "I'm Zara," she said, glancing up at him. "Vance," he replied. "Vance Langston." Zara stopped in her tracks. "Wait, Langston like Langston Holdings." He gave a slight nod, clearly used to the reaction. "You're that Langston?" "Yes." "Why are you at a church bake sale?" "My niece goes to school here," he said casually. "She's in kindergarten. I promised her I'd buy every chocolate chip cookie made today." Zara laughed despite herself. "And instead, you ended up rescuing a stranger from a cupcake tray." "Not how I planned the day going," he said, "but I'm not complaining." She looked at him again. He was polished, powerful, probably worth more than the entire town combined, and yet he was here, rolling up his sleeves to help her like he wasn't carrying the weight of $1 billion company on his shoulders. Back at the table, her cousin Julia was frantically frosting cupcakes. "Zara." "Where did you—" "I'm fine," she said quickly. "I just needed a second." Julia's eyes flicked between her and Vance, eyebrows raised. "Right." Vance turned to her. "I'll be back in a few minutes." "To buy more cookies?" Zara asked. "To check on your hand." Then he walked off, disappearing into the crowd like he hadn't just flipped her entire day upside down. Julia leaned in. "Who the hell was that?" Zara stared after him. "Apparently a billionaire." Julia's eyes widened. "And he just helped you?" "Yeah," Julia smirked. "Girl, you better burn yourself more often." Zara rolled her eyes but couldn't deny the flutter in her chest. Vance Langston. She'd seen his name in Forbes, not real life, and now he was promising to come back. She tried to shake it off, but when she caught him watching her from across the lawn 10 minutes later holding a paper plate stacked with cookies, and that same unreadable expression on his face, she felt it again. Something had started, and she wasn't sure she wanted to stop it. 2 days later, Zara stood in the back kitchen of her aunt's bakery, rubbing the ointment Vance had given her over the healing burn on her palm. The skin was still tender, but the pain had dulled. She hadn't seen him since the bake sale, and part of her had convinced herself that their brief exchange had been a fluke. Until a matte black Range Rover pulled up in front of the bakery just as she was flipping the sign to closed. She watched through the glass door, her breath catching when she saw him step out. No suit this time, just dark jeans, a crisp white shirt, and a camel-colored coat slung over one shoulder. He moved like someone who didn't need to rush for anyone, but people would wait for him anyway. He opened the door before she could lock it. "You're closed," he said, glancing at the sign. "I can read," Zara replied, narrowing her eyes, "but you're still inside. And you're still rich. Doesn't mean you get special treatment." His expression didn't waver. "Then I'll pay you triple for a single cupcake." She walked behind the counter. "That's ridiculous." "Quadruple." "Are you always this persistent when you want sugar?" "I'm not here for sugar." Her fingers froze over the register. "I wanted to see how your hand was doing." She lifted it. "Healing." "Good," he said, stepping forward and glancing around the bakery. "You run this place." "My aunt does. I just help after classes." "You're in school?" "Grad program, environmental science." He tilted his head. "That's unexpected." "Because I work with frosting. Because I assumed someone who handles burns without blinking would be in something more." "Aggressive," she laughed despite herself. "Saving ecosystems is aggressive. You just haven't seen me in full tree hugger mode." "I'd like to," he said, leaning against the counter. She arched a brow. "You always flirt this directly." He didn't blink. "Only when I mean it." Zara folded her arms. "You don't even know me." "That's not stopping me from wanting to." She studied him carefully. His confidence wasn't loud, but it filled the room. It wasn't rehearsed either. He wasn't trying to impress her. He already knew who he was and didn't care whether she was impressed or not. "I don't date guys who show up with more money than common sense. I don't date women who think that's a bad thing. Then we're already incompatible." "I disagree." She narrowed her eyes. "Most people would have sent flowers. I'm not most people. Besides, I brought something better." He stepped aside and opened the bakery door wider. A little girl with curly dark hair and a backpack stepped inside, clutching a crumpled paper in her hand. "Zara, this is Chloe. Chloe, meet Zara." Zara knelt. "Hi, Chloe." Chloe smiled shyly and held out the paper. "I drew you. My uncle said you were brave." Zara took it, stunned. It was a crayon drawing of a girl holding cupcakes, a bandage on her hand, and a huge sun overhead. "I love it," Zara whispered. Chloe beamed, then ran back outside to the car where a woman waited in the passenger seat, probably her nanny. Zara stood slowly, folding the drawing gently. "You didn't have to do that," she insisted. "Said you were a warrior in an apron." Her words. Zara crossed her arms again, but her voice had softened. "You're not what I expected. Neither are you." A silence passed, heavier this time, but not uncomfortable. "I've got an hour before I have to be back at the office," he said. "Will you come with me?" "To do what?" "Eat, talk. Let me convince you I'm not just a walking bank account." She hesitated. "Where?" He pulled a sleek black card from his coat. "Wherever you want." "I can have a reservation in 5 minutes. I'm not dressed for 5-star cuisine." "You're dressed like someone who doesn't pretend to be something she isn't. That's rarer than you think." She stared at him, then glanced at the drawing in her hand. "Fine," she said. 1 hour. He opened the door for her, and she stepped outside into the chilled wind of early evening. The Range Rover gleamed under the bakery's sign, and a driver stepped out to open the rear door. "You have a driver?" she asked, raising a brow. "You want to talk ecosystems in traffic?" Touché. Inside the car, the seats were butter-soft leather, the scent of something expensive but subtle filling the space. He poured her a glass of still water from a chilled compartment and handed it to her without a word. She blinked. "You carry chilled water back here," he shrugged. "I like to be prepared." "For what?" "The apocalypse." "For moments like this." The car pulled smoothly into traffic and she turned toward him. "You didn't really come back just to check on my hand." "No," he admitted. "I came back because I wanted to know what else makes you burn." She looked out the window, hiding her smile. "Careful," she said. "You might find out." The rooftop restaurant wasn't listed on any map. There was no sign out front, no menu posted by the entrance. Yet when the elevator doors opened, Zara stepped into a world that didn't belong above a commercial high-rise in the middle of the city. Soft golden lights draped from overhead beams swayed in the breeze. A string quartet played something low and elegant in the far corner. The tables were spaced far enough apart to give the illusion of privacy while overlooking the glittering skyline, as if the stars themselves had bent closer just for this place. Zara glanced at the host, who greeted Vance with a nod and led them to a secluded table near the edge of the terrace. The chair cushions were ivory, the silverware heavy, the glassware delicate. A single candle flickered between them. She sat carefully, watching Vance settle across from her like he was completely at ease. "You really don't do anything halfway," she said, unfolding her napkin. "I find halfway doesn't usually leave a lasting impression." "I'd say mission accomplished." A waiter approached and poured water without asking. No menus were offered. Zara leaned in slightly. "Let me guess. You already ordered for both of us." "I asked the chef to prepare something seasonal," he replied. "I didn't think you'd object to being surprised. I'm a scientist. Surprises usually mean lab accidents." "That explains your calm reaction to burning yourself." She tilted her head. "You're not going to let that go, are you? Not when it's the reason you're sitting here." The first course arrived in the form of delicate, hand-rolled pasta with white truffle shavings and something floral she couldn't identify. One bite was enough to make her forget what she'd been about to say. Vance watched her reaction quietly, his expression unreadable. She swallowed. "That's unfairly good. Then I'll take that as a compliment. Is this the kind of place you bring all your dates?" "I don't go on many." "Because you're too busy. Because most people want the version of me they've already created in their heads." "And what version is that?" He picked up his wine glass but didn't sip. "One who doesn't bleed, one who doesn't lose, one who doesn't care." Zara blinked. "That's a heavy assumption. It's a familiar one." She studied him now, not the man who'd patched her hand or brought his niece to the bakery, but the one who had clearly spent years learning to read people faster than they could read him. "Why did you really come to the bake sale?" she asked. His gaze didn't waver. "Because I promised Chloe I would, and I don't break promises." She traced the rim of her glass. "You didn't look like a man who belonged there. That's the point. I walk into most rooms knowing I don't belong. But I show up anyway. So you're stubborn." "I prefer determined." The second course arrived pan-seared fish with roasted fennel and a citrus glaze. It looked like art and tasted like something that should have taken hours to create. Zara set her fork down after a few bites. "You don't do small talk, do you?" "Do you want me to?" "No," she admitted, "but I'm still trying to figure out what this is." "This," he said, "is me trying to figure you out too." "Why?" "Because you didn't flinch when I told you my name. You didn't ask for anything. You didn't perform." "I didn't have time to perform. I had frosting on my shoes." "Exactly." She hesitated. "You think that makes me different?" "I know it does." Their plates were cleared, and dessert arrived in the form of a dark chocolate creation that cracked open to reveal a molten center, surrounded by edible gold flakes and fresh raspberries. Zara blinked at it. "This should be illegal." He leaned forward. "You want me to have them arrested?" She laughed, the kind of laugh that loosened something in her chest. "You're impossible. I've been called worse." She set her spoon down. "You're not what I expected either." "What did you expect?" "Someone who'd talk about stocks and acquisitions, not someone who quotes promises to his niece and shows up with burn cream." He didn't respond right away. "I used to be the first version. Then life reminded me that money can't buy time." She didn't ask what he meant. The sudden shift in his tone didn't invite questions. Instead, she sat back, absorbing the weight of his words. The check never came. The waiter simply nodded once at Vance and disappeared. When they stood to leave, he offered her his arm. She hesitated before taking it out of instinct, not reluctance. The elevator ride down was silent but not awkward, more like they were both aware something had shifted again, something that couldn't be undone. Outside, the Range Rover waited, headlights cutting through the night. The driver opened the door. "I can get a cab," Zara said. "I'd rather you didn't." She took a breath, then slid into the seat beside him. As they pulled away, she glanced at him. "What happens next? That depends," he said. "What do you want to happen?" "I don't know," she admitted slowly, "but I don't want this to be a one-night fairy tale." "It isn't," he said without hesitation. "I don't do temporary." She turned her head toward the window, the city blurring past, but her reflection stayed steady. So did his beside her, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she needed to run. The invitation came 3 days later, tucked inside a cream-colored envelope with her name written in clean, elegant handwriting. No return address, no explanation. Just a handwritten note on thick stationery, Friday, 7 o'clock. Wear something that makes you feel like you. Zara held it between her fingers, eyebrows pulled together as she stood behind the bakery counter. Julia peeked over her shoulder, icing a tray of lemon scones. That's either wildly romantic or extremely cryptic, Julia said. Are you going? I haven't decided. You're holding the invitation like it's a detonator. That's not undecided, that's terrified. Zara set the card down. It's not fear, it's caution. Julia stopped icing. Because of him or because of you? Zara didn't answer. There was too much truth in that question. Friday came anyway. She chose a black jumpsuit with a wide belt and sharp neckline, nothing flashy, but something that made her stand tall. Her hair was pinned up, not perfectly, just enough to stay out of her face. She wore a single necklace, a silver charm shaped like a leaf, a gift from her mother when she graduated undergrad. At exactly 7, the same driver from before pulled up in front of the bakery. No words. Just a nod and an open door. The car moved through the city until it crossed the bridge and wound its way into a neighborhood she didn't recognize. Walled estates, tree-lined drives, and gates taller than most buildings. Finally, they pulled through one of those gates into a courtyard paved with pale stone and lit by low golden lights. Ivy crawled up the side of the stone house, and music drifted from somewhere inside a piano, soft and slow. The driver opened the door. Zara stepped out into the cool air, her heels clicking against the stone as she approached the front door. It opened before she could knock. Vance stood there, no jacket, just a dark button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He looked like someone who belonged in this house, comfortable, grounded, but not showing off. He looked at her, eyes sweeping over her once with quiet approval. "You look like yourself," he said. "That was the idea. Come on." He led her through the house, not to a dining room or a ballroom, but through glass doors that opened onto a private garden. Lanterns hung from the trees, and a table sat in the middle of the grass, set simply but beautifully, with 2 places and a bottle of wine already open. The centerpiece was a cluster of herbs and wildflowers, and the scent of rosemary and thyme hung in the air. "You did this?" Zara asked. "I had help with the food," he said. "But the rest?" "Yeah," she walked toward the table slowly. "Why here? I wanted to show you something real." Zara turned to face him. "What's real about this? This garden's mine. I planted every tree, laid every stone. When things get loud, I come here." She glanced back at the table. "It's beautiful." He pulled out her chair. "I wanted you to see where I go when I'm not performing." The first course was brought out a moment later, not by a waiter, but by an older woman in a pale blue dress and comfortable shoes. She smiled at Zara as she set the plates down. "This is Elise," Vance said. "She's been with my family longer than I've had a driver." "Longer than you've had hair," Elise added, then winked. Zara laughed. "Do you always let your staff tease you?" "Only the ones who raised me." Elise gave Vance's arm a gentle pat before returning inside. Zara tilted her head. "She raised you. My parents traveled a lot. Elise was the one who made sure I brushed my teeth and didn't grow up into a complete sociopath." Zara tasted the salad in front of her: figs, goat cheese, arugula, and something citrusy. "She did a good job." Vance looked at her for a long beat. "I hope so." They ate quietly for a few moments, the only sound the rustle of leaves and the distant hum of the piano. "So," Zara said, setting down her fork, "tell me something no one else knows." He leaned back in his chair. "I almost sold Langston Holdings 2 years ago." Her eyebrows lifted. "What stopped you?" Chloe was born. I held her, and suddenly nothing else made sense. "I didn't want to pass down a company. I wanted to pass down something good, something that mattered." Zara nodded slowly. "And what does that look like for you now?" "Balance. Integrity. Less noise." She looked around the garden. "Doesn't seem very noisy here." "Then maybe I'm on the right track." He stood and walked to the edge of the garden, beckoning her. She joined him beneath an arched trellis covered in white roses. "This is where I think best," he said. "When I'm here, things are clearer. Zara stepped beneath the trellis facing him, and what's clear right now that I want this to last. She sucked in a breath, her heart thudding uncomfortably fast. Vance, I know it's fast, but I'm not offering you a fantasy. I don't want to take you on a jet to distract you from your life. I want to walk into it. She swallowed hard. You don't even know what my life looks like. I've seen enough to know I want to learn the rest. And if I walked away right now, I'd let you, he said softly. But I'd never stop hoping you'd come back. Zara stepped closer, her voice low. You don't make promises lightly, do you? Never. She reached up, touching the edge of his collar. Then I need you to make one more, anything. Promise me that if this becomes real, we don't lose ourselves to it. He didn't hesitate. I promise. And then he kissed her, not demanding, not claiming, but real, solid, like something planted deep, determined to grow. Later, as they sat beneath the stars, her head resting on his shoulder, he laced his fingers through hers. This started with a burn, he said quietly. She smiled. And somehow I'm not sorry. Neither of them moved. The night stretched on, quiet and golden, the kind of night that didn't ask for more than what it already was. And for the first time in a long time, they both stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. Because maybe, just maybe, they'd already found exactly where they were meant to land. Zara stood at the edge of the Langston Foundation Gala, her heels sinking slightly into the plush carpet of the Art Museum's East Wing, now transformed into a glittering ballroom. Golden chandeliers flickered overhead, casting light over marble sculptures and guests in tailored tuxedos and silk gowns. A string ensemble played something lilting, and waiters moved silently with trays of jewel-toned cocktails. She adjusted the deep green velvet sleeve of her gown and exhaled slowly. You keep looking at the door like it's going to swallow you, Vance murmured beside her, handing her a glass of champagne. I'm waiting for someone to ask me to leave, she replied, scanning the crowd. I'm not exactly one of them. You're not. That's why I brought you. Zara glanced up. You know, you could have just invited me to dinner again. I could have, but tonight's important. I'm announcing the new board initiative. I wanted you here when I did. She tilted her head. Why? Because it's your idea, she blinked. What? You said you wanted the foundation to back more grassroots projects, local environmental startups with community-led models. I brought it to the board. They voted last week. You didn't tell me. I wanted to see your face when I made it public. A rush of emotion hit her. You didn't have to give me credit. I didn't, he said calmly. I gave you a seat. He nodded toward the stage being set up beneath a massive oil painting. Your name will be on the advisory council list by tomorrow. She stared at him. Are you serious? I don't do gestures halfway. A woman in a navy gown approached, interrupting them. Mr. Langston, they're ready for you. He nodded once, then turned to Zara. Come with me. He led her through the crowd, past murmured greetings and curious glances to the front of the ballroom. As he stepped onto the stage, the room quieted instantly. There was no mic, he didn't need one. His voice carried, low and certain. Thank you all for being here tonight, he began. This foundation was built on legacy, but a legacy means nothing if it doesn't evolve. Tonight, I want to talk about the future and the woman who gave me the clarity to see it. Zara froze. Her heart pounded as every head turned toward her. Zara Preston doesn't come from boardrooms or billion-dollar valuations. She comes from community, from purpose, from the belief that real change happens when we invest in the people who are already doing the work. Because of her, the Langston Foundation will be allocating a new fund to support grassroots environmental efforts across the country, starting this fall. Applause erupted. Zara barely registered the sound. Vance stepped down, crossed to her, and took her hand. You didn't know it, but you've been changing things since the first day we met. This is insane, she breathed. This is only the beginning. He led her out onto the balcony, away from the crowd. The skyline stretched beyond them, the river catching the city lights like glass. She turned to him, still stunned. You just gave me a seat at a billionaire's table. No, he said softly. I pulled up a new table, one we build together. She stared at him. You're not afraid of what people will say. I've made peace with not being understood by the world. But I'm not making peace with losing you. Zara swallowed, her voice unsteady. You won't. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box. She gasped before she even opened it. Inside sat a ring, a delicate band of platinum, wrapped around a single emerald-cut sapphire, flanked by 2 white diamonds. "I know it's fast," he said, "but I also know what certainty feels like now. I don't want to wait to start whatever comes next." She looked up at him, tears gathering in her eyes. "You're serious?" "I've never been more," Zara laughed through the tears. "You're proposing after 2 weeks. I'm proposing because I know you. I know your fire and your fear. I know how you challenge me without needing to fix me. I know that when I imagine the future, you're in every version." She looked down at the ring, then back at him. "Yes," his breath caught. "Yes, yes," she said again, smiling through tears. "Yes to all of it." He slid the ring onto her finger, then kissed her slow and deep, the kind of kiss that didn't care who was watching. Inside, applause echoed again, but the sound barely registered over the beat of her heart against his. Later that night, after the gala ended and the guests had faded into the night, they returned to the garden behind his house. Lanterns still hung from the trees, now swaying in the late breeze. Vance wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and pulled her onto the bench beneath the trellis. "I want to get married here," she said suddenly. He looked at her in surprise. "Here, in the garden. Just us, Chloe, Julia, Elise, maybe a couple friends, no ballroom, no press," he nodded. "Then that's what we'll do." She leaned into him. "You know, I thought I'd have to fight for everything I wanted in life. Turns out I just had to burn my hand and meet a man who doesn't flinch when I tell him what I need." "I don't flinch," he said, brushing a kiss against her temple. "I just make it happen." They sat together in the quiet, his arm wrapped tightly around her, her head resting on his chest. The stars blinked overhead and the trees whispered above them. Weeks later, they exchanged vows beneath those very branches. Chloe tossed petals from a basket too big for her, and Elise wiped away tears as she clasped Zara's hands with Vance's. There were no cameras, no headlines, just wildflowers, promises, and the kind of silence that only exists when everything is exactly as it should be. Afterward, they danced barefoot on the grass, the garden alive with laughter and soft music. Vance whispered something only she could hear, and Zara smiled the kind of smile that came from knowing you'd found home in another person. And when the last lantern dimmed and the night slipped into dawn, they were still there wrapped in each other, the past behind them, the future wide open, together, always.